Hi everyone, in this video I'm going to talk about VLAN tagging and how it relates to your Nutanix deployment. At this point you should have received the cluster questionnaire. We're going to take a look at this section right here, VLAN tagging required. One note, if you plan to deploy your cluster in a flat network environment, then although it's not Nutanix best practice, you can configure your switch ports in access mode and just answer no for all of these questions. However, if you plan to deploy your cluster in a VLAN separated environment, then the switch ports facing your Nutanix nodes should be configured as trunk ports. And that brings up the question of the native VLAN. Which VLAN do we want to set as native or untagged on those switch ports? Nutanix says that that native VLAN should be set to this, the hypervisor management and CVM VLAN. If you set this as native or untagged, then you can answer no here. Now let's look at why that is the recommendation from Nutanix. By default, Nutanix nodes are shipped from the factory without any VLAN tagging, and this puts them in what they call a foundation-ready state. And this means that the factory nodes can be joined to a cluster immediately or re-imaged as needed. If you don't set the switch ports to have a native VLAN that matches your hypervisor management CVM VLAN, then you need to go into the node directly with a keyboard and monitor and configure that VLAN tag on each node, which is time consuming and it introduces another potential point of error in the deployment process. Let's look at an example of how to configure the native VLAN on your switch ports. Here we've got an example with a Cisco Nexus 5K switch. This is assuming you've already set switch port mode trunk and configured your allowed VLANs. Then you can add this command, switch port trunk native VLAN. In this example, it's 10, but there you would put whatever you want your native VLAN to be in your environment. So we've now taken a look at this first VLAN, hypervisor management and CVM. We know that Nutanix says this should be set as native or untagged on the switch ports as a best practice to streamline the deployment process. But what about these other VLANs? First, let's look at IPMI. The switch ports that are connected to your IPMI interface on each node should be set in access mode, and that's because those switch ports are only going to pass traffic for this IPMI subnet. Because those are in access mode, we can set this to no VLAN tagging required. All right, and assuming we've set this VLAN to native, because we can only set one VLAN on a trunk to the native VLAN, that would mean that all of the other VLANs are tagged. Therefore, all of our VM VLANs and potentially vMotion, if we're running an ESXi deployment, will be tagged, and so we should answer these as yes. All right. Now, if you don't follow this recommendation, which is not a problem, and you have a different VLAN, say one of your VM VLANs set as the native VLAN, then you should just specify in this list which of those is untagged by answering no. All right, that was an overview of VLAN tagging and how it relates to your Nutanix deployment. I hope that helps, and thanks for watching.